Location: a fictional mountain valley in a remote combat zone. Date: late autumn. Time: 02:17 local time. The weather could not have been worse. Heavy clouds covered the moon. Wind gusts exceeded 40 knots through the mountain passes. Visibility changed every few seconds. Dust storms rolled across the valley floor. The enemy controlled nearly every high ridgeline. Deep inside the valley, a coalition special operations task force, 381 Navy SEALs divided among multiple assault teams, had completed a raid against a major insurgent command center. The objective had been successful, but extraction failed. Their helicopters had been driven away by heavy anti-aircraft fire. Within minutes, every escape route collapsed. Enemy fighters began closing from every direction. The operation had transformed from a successful raid into a desperate fight for survival. Only one aircraft remained close enough to help. An A-10 Thunderbolt II. Call sign: Hog 11. Its pilot was Captain Emily Carter. She had already been airborne for nearly 5 hours. Most expected her to return to base. Instead, she turned back toward the valley. Scene 1: the mission that changed everything. Narration: hours earlier, everything had looked routine. Satellite intelligence suggested only light resistance around the target compound. Special Operations Command approved the mission after weeks of surveillance. The assault force inserted by helicopters under complete darkness. Within 12 minutes, they captured the compound. Computers, hard drives, communication equipment. Everything went exactly according to plan. Then one mistake changed everything. An enemy scout escaped. Within minutes, thousands of radio transmissions exploded across nearby villages. The entire valley woke up. Pickup trucks, motorcycles, mortars, machine guns. Dozens of armed groups rushed toward the extraction zone. The hunters had become the hunted. Radio dialogue: Ground Commander. Command, this is Viper 6. We've been compromised. Operations Center. Confirm enemy strength. Ground Commander. Too many to count. Technical explanation: military raids depend on speed. If enemy reinforcements arrive before extraction, elite units can become trapped despite completing their mission. Suspense ending: nobody yet realized. This was only the beginning. Scene 2: extraction collapses. Narration: the rescue helicopters appeared exactly on schedule. Their infrared lights pierced the darkness. For a brief moment, everyone believed they were going home. Then bright orange streaks shot upward. Heavy machine gun fire. Rocket-propelled grenades. Shoulder-fired missiles. The sky erupted. The lead helicopter banked violently. Its warning system screamed. The pilots had only seconds to react. Pilot dialogue: lead helicopter. Taking heavy fire. Braking left. We cannot land. Ground Commander: negative, we have wounded. Pilot: I'm sorry, we're pulling out. Technical explanation: helicopters become extremely vulnerable while slowing to land. Hovering makes them easy targets for concentrated ground fire. Suspense ending: the helicopters disappeared into the darkness. The valley became silent. Too silent. Scene 3: SURUNDD. Narration: the SEALs quickly established defensive positions. Night vision goggles revealed movement everywhere. Every ridge, every hillside, every tree line. Enemy forces were closing in. Some teams had already fired more than half their ammunition. Medical supplies were nearly exhausted. The radio operator kept trying to reach higher headquarters. Static answered every call. Then, one transmission finally broke through. Radio dialogue. This is Hog 11. I hear someone calling. Anybody copy? The operations center immediately answered. Hog 11, be advised. You are the only aircraft within 100 miles. Silence followed. Captain Carter looked at her fuel gauge. She looked toward the valley. Then she smiled. Pilot dialogue. I guess they're stuck with me. Technical explanation. The A-10 Thunderbolt II was designed specifically to protect troops on the ground. Unlike fast jets, it could fly low, slow, and survive heavy damage. Suspense ending. She turned directly toward the battle. Scene 4, into the valley. Narration. The mountain walls rose like black giants. Radar coverage disappeared. GPS signals became unreliable. Every warning light inside the cockpit demanded caution. But Captain Carter continued descending. 3,000 feet. 2,000. 1,000. She could now hear gunfire through her headset. Tracer rounds climbed into the darkness. Enemy fighters had spotted her. Pilot dialogue. Hog 11 visual. I have friendlies. I also have a whole lot of bad guys. Ground commander. Please tell me you're carrying the big gun. Captain Carter laughed. Oh, I'm carrying exactly the big gun. Technical explanation. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon fires nearly 70 rounds every second. Its purpose is devastating precision against ground targets. Suspense ending. She armed the cannon. The valley waited. Scene 5, the first gun run. Narration. Captain Carter rolled the aircraft left. Her targeting computer locked onto enemy positions climbing the eastern ridge. She ignored the anti-aircraft tracers rising toward her cockpit. Altitude. Speed. Distance. Perfect. She squeezed the trigger. The night exploded. BRRRRRTTTTT. The unmistakable sound echoed across the valley. Hundreds of depleted uranium rounds ripped through enemy vehicles and fortified positions. Entire machine gun nests disappeared beneath clouds of rock and fire. For the first time in nearly an hour, the SEALs stopped shooting. They simply watched. The impossible was happening. One aircraft had just changed the battle. Radio dialogue. Ground commander. Holy! I've never been happier to hear that gun. Captain Carter. Don't celebrate yet. I've got company. Technical explanation. The psychological effect of the A-10's cannon is often as powerful as its destructive capability, forcing enemy units to break cover and disrupting coordinated attack. Scene 6, missile lock. Narration. Inside the cockpit, the calm rhythm of the mission shattered. A sharp warning tone echoed through Captain Emily Carter's headset. Beep, beep, beep. A bright symbol flashed across the threat display. A heat-seeking missile had locked onto Hog 11. Far below, the valley erupted with orange flashes as another launcher fired from the western ridge. The missile climbed rapidly through the darkness. At nearly twice the speed of sound, it closed the distance in seconds. The A-10 wasn't built to outrun missiles. It never had been. Its strength was something else. Survival. Captain Carter didn't panic. She had practiced this exact emergency hundreds of times. But training inside a simulator could never recreate this moment. 381 operators were depending on one aircraft. If she went down, no one was coming. Cockpit dialogue. Captain Carter. Missile launch. Flares, flares, flares. She pressed the countermeasure switch. Brilliant streams of burning magnesium exploded behind the aircraft. The missile suddenly hesitated. Then, it chased the brighter target. Captain Carter rolled hard to the left. The missile exploded less than 50 yards behind her tail. The blast shook the entire aircraft. Warning lights illuminated the instrument panel. Ground radio. CLJTSC. Hog 11, are you hit? Captain Carter. Negative. Still flying. Let's get back to work. Technical explanation. Heat-seeking missiles follow the infrared signature produced by aircraft engines. Flares create hotter targets, confusing older missile guidance systems and giving pilots a chance to evade. Suspense ending. She had survived the first missile. Nobody knew another launcher was already preparing to fire. Scene 7, the Valley of Fire. Narration. Enemy commanders realized something important. The A-10 wasn't leaving. So they changed tactics. Instead of attacking the SEALs, every heavy weapon turned toward Hog 11. Machine guns, automatic cannons, rocket launchers, tracer rounds climbed into the sky like glowing rivers. Captain Carter flew directly into them. The aircraft shook violently as fragments struck the armored fuselage. Metal rang throughout the cockpit. One round shattered an exterior light. Another punched through part of the right wing. Still, the A-10 kept flying. Below, the trapped operators watched in disbelief. The aircraft absorbed punishment that would have destroyed many other jets. Cockpit dialogue. Captain Carter. That's all you've got. She smiled despite the chaos. Ground dialogue. SEAL team leader. She's taking every gun they have. JTAC. She's pulling their attention away from us. Technical explanation. The A-10's titanium bathtub armor surrounds the pilot, protecting against heavy ground fire. Critical systems are duplicated, so the aircraft can continue flying even after severe damage. Suspense ending. Then one warning appeared that armor couldn't solve. Fuel pressure. Dropping. Scene 8, running out of time. Narration. Captain Carter checked the gauges. Fuel levels were falling much faster than expected. Damage to one fuel line was causing a steady leak. She had enough fuel for only a handful of attack runs. Every decision now mattered. Every burst of the cannon. Every turn. Every second. Back at the Joint Operations Center, commanders debated ordering her home. One officer finally picked up the radio. Operations Center. Hog 11, recommend immediate withdrawal. Silence. Captain Carter looked down. The infrared display showed dozens of friendly heat signatures trapped inside the valley. Beyond them, hundreds of enemy fighters continued advancing. She answered calmly. Captain Carter. Negative. I'll stay until they're moving. The room fell silent. No one argued. Technical explanation. Combat pilots constantly balance fuel, weapons, aircraft damage, and mission priorities. Remaining too long risks losing both the aircraft and the pilot. Suspense ending. She had made her decision. Now she needed to create a path out of the valley. Scene 9, blasting an exit. Narration. The Joint Terminal Attack Controller marked the enemy's strongest defensive line with infrared lasers. It stretched nearly half a mile across the narrow valley. Machine guns, mortars, technical trucks, hidden bunkers. If that line remained intact, the SEALs would never escape. Captain Carter studied the terrain. Then she saw it. A dry riverbed, barely visible beneath the dust. It wound through the mountains toward friendly territory. But enemy vehicles blocked every entrance. She rolled the aircraft into her steepest dive yet. Altitude: 3,000 feet. 2,000. 1,500. The targeting reticle settled perfectly. Cockpit dialogue. Gun armed. Cleared hot. She squeezed the trigger. BRRRRRRTTTTTT. The valley exploded. The GAU-8 cannon carved a devastating line across the enemy positions. Trucks erupted into flames. Machine gun nests vanished. Ammunition stores detonated in massive secondary explosions. Smoke filled the entire riverbed. For the first time all night, there was an opening. Ground dialogue. JTAC. Lane is open. Ground commander. All teams. Move, move, move. Hundreds of SEALs immediately sprinted toward the newly cleared escape route. Technical explanation. Close air support often focuses not on destroying every enemy position, but on creating a temporary corridor that allows friendly forces to maneuver. Timing is everything. Suspense ending. The escape had begun, but the enemy wasn't finished. Scene 10, the last pass. Narration. The valley came alive once more. Enemy reinforcements poured from the northern hills. Heavy machine guns opened fire directly into the escaping column. Captain Carter glanced at her ammunition counter. Only a few hundred rounds remained. Her fuel warning light glowed steadily. Base called again. Radio. Hog 1-1. You are bingo fuel. You must return immediately. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked down at the men still running through the smoke. Some carried wounded teammates. Others had exhausted nearly all their ammunition. They had one chance. She rolled into her final attack. This time, the enemy concentrated every remaining weapon against her aircraft. Tracer fire surrounded Hog 1-1 from every direction. A loud impact echoed through the cockpit. Hydraulic pressure dropped. The control stick suddenly felt heavy. Yet the continued descending. Captain Carter lined up the attack. One final squeeze. BRRRRRRRRT. The remaining enemy firing positions disappeared beneath a wall of explosions. The escape corridor was finally secure. Ground radio. Ground commander. Hog 1-1. You just saved every one of us. Captain Carter finally smiled. Then let's all go home. Technical explanation. The A-10's manual flight control backup system allows pilots to retain limited control even if hydraulic systems are damaged, one of the aircraft's most famous survival features. Cliffhanger. As Hog 1-1 turned away from the valley, smoke poured from the damaged wing. Captain Carter looked at the nearest friendly airfield. She wasn't sure the aircraft would make it. Scene 11, the long flight home. Narration. As the last SEAL team disappeared into the safety of the mountain pass, Hog 1-1 climbed away from the battlefield. The cockpit was eerily quiet. The adrenaline that had carried Captain Emily Carter through the fight began to fade. Now the damage became impossible to ignore. Warning lights covered the instrument panel. The right hydraulic system had failed. Fuel continued leaking from the damaged wing. Engine temperatures fluctuated with every passing minute. Behind her, the first rescue helicopters finally entered the valley. This time, there was almost no enemy fire. The path she had carved with her cannon had given the trapped force enough time to escape. One by one, the helicopters lifted the wounded and exhausted operators to safety. The battle was over, but Captain Carter still had to bring her aircraft home. Radio dialogue. AWACS controller. Hog 1-1, radar confirms you're clear of the combat zone. We'll guide you all the way. Captain Carter. Copy. Let's see if this old hog has one more landing left. Technical explanation. After combat, pilots must transition immediately from fighting to aircraft management. Damage assessment, fuel monitoring, and emergency procedures become the highest priority. Suspense ending. Then the cockpit shook again. One engine began losing power. Scene 12, a landing no one expected. Narration. The nearest friendly airfield appeared through the morning haze. Emergency vehicles lined both sides of the runway. Fire crews waited with engines running. Medical teams stood ready. Inside the control tower, nobody spoke. They watched the scarred A-10 approach with smoke trailing from its right wing. Captain Carter lowered the landing gear. Only 2 wheels indicated locked. The third remained uncertain. She had seconds to decide. Go around. Or commit. She took one slow breath. Then continued the approach. The aircraft touched down hard. The damaged landing gear collapsed, sending sparks across the runway. The A-10 slid hundreds of feet before finally coming to a stop. Silence. Then the canopy opened. Captain Carter climbed out under her own power. The airfield erupted in applause. Ground crews, mechanics, medics, and fellow pilots rushed toward the aircraft. Not because she had landed, because she had returned. Radio dialogue. Tower. Hog 1-1. Welcome home. Technical explanation. The A-10's rugged landing gear and reinforced airframe were designed to withstand rough conditions, giving pilots a greater chance of surviving emergency landings. Suspense ending. But the story of that mission was only beginning. Scene 13, the investigation. Narration. Within days, military investigators examined every second of the mission. Cockpit voice recordings, flight data, helmet camera footage, ground radio transmissions. Every attack run was reconstructed. The results surprised even veteran commanders. Captain Carter had flown repeated low-altitude passes through concentrated anti-aircraft fire, each one timed precisely to protect the withdrawing teams. Investigators also found that she had voluntarily remained beyond the recommended fuel limit after evaluating the situation. The review concluded that her action significantly increased the chances of the force escaping intact. Maintenance crews counted dozens of impact marks across the aircraft's wings, fuselage, and tail. Despite the damage, its critical systems had continued functioning long enough to complete the mission. The aircraft itself became a testament to the durability for which the A-10 was famous. Technical explanation. Mission investigations examined decision-making, communications, aircraft performance, and tactics, not only to understand what happened, but also to improve future operations. Suspense ending. Then came the final radio recording. It left the entire review board silent. Scene 14, the final transmission. Narration. At the end of the mission, after the last helicopter had departed and the valley had fallen quiet, one final exchange had been captured. It was never intended for headlines. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rehearsed. It was simply honest. Radio dialogue. Ground Commander. Hog 1-1. All personnel accounted for. Everyone's coming home. A pause followed. Then Captain Carter answered. Captain Carter. That's all I needed to hear. Those 7 words became the most remembered part of the mission. Not because they celebrated victory, but because they reflected the purpose of close air support, protecting people on the ground. Technical explanation. In military aviation, success is often measured not by targets destroyed, but by lives protected and missions completed. Suspense ending. The mission ended. Its legacy did not. Scene 15 Epilogue. Narration. In the months that followed, the operation was studied in training classrooms and planning exercises. Pilots discussed fuel management, threat avoidance, and close air support coordination. Ground units reviewed communication procedures and emergency extraction planning. The damaged A-10 was repaired and eventually returned to service. Its patched skin carried the scars of that night, quiet reminders of what it had endured. The rescued operators returned to their families. Many continued serving. Others chose different paths, carrying memories that would never fully fade. As for Captain Emily Carter, she never described herself as a hero. When asked about the mission years later, she simply smiled and said, "I was the one who happened to be overhead when people needed help." For those on the ground, however, that night would always be remembered differently. When every escape route had vanished, when hope had nearly disappeared, one determined pilot refused to leave. And because she stayed, hundreds of lives had another sunrise. Ending. Some missions are remembered for the battles they win. Others are remembered for the lives they save. Whether in military aviation or civilian flight, preparation, discipline, teamwork, and calm decision-making remain the foundations of survival. Aircraft are remarkable machines, but it is the people who fly them, support them, and trust one another under extraordinary pressure who make the greatest difference. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, remember, the most powerful stories are often those that celebrate courage, teamwork, and the commitment to bring everyone home.